Uh, Good afternoon. Welcome back to Washington, D.C. I'm standing on the National Mall. If you look in the distance behind me, no, other side, over here, that's the US Capitol building where, if I understand the frantic texts have just been sent correctly, Nancy Pelosi has just called the race, which might be a little premature, but it doesn't seem unlikely at this point. I figured if you joined us the other day, I took you on a little tour around the streets surrounding the White House, which meant that you mostly got to see a lot of boarded up windows. So I figured I'd take you, since we're in one of the most beautiful cities in America, I figured I'd take you on a little tour of the nicest bit of it. So behind you can see the Capitol building, which is where the House of Representatives and the Senate is. If I turn around, that there is the Washington Monument, and we're going to walk that way towards the Lincoln Memorial. So yeah, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat, and they will eventually pop up on my screen, and I'll try and explain to you the extraordinary events of the last few days. Who's president? Any news? Says Marina. Yes and no. So where we are at the minute is that a bunch of states are expected to sort of count their final run of votes in the next few hours, maybe days, but probably hours. Pennsylvania is the one you should be watching. So Pennsylvania is 20 electoral votes. It's a big prize, and it was originally looking like it was going to be in the president's column, but as was predicted by many people, the way it works is they kept the in-person votes, the in-person on the day votes first, and people who vote in person and on the day tend to vote for the president, tend to vote Republican, and the mail-in ballots, the postal votes, they were counted second, and all the polls leading up to the election shows that they were overwhelmingly going to be for Biden. So that's why in the couple of days since election day, it has appeared so the vote has been sort of changing from one side to the other. The result has been changing from one side to the other. And this is what the president has been complaining about. The thing is, he knows this. He knows postal votes were polling drastically for Biden rather than for him. He knew those skewed that way. So lying, and and he's doing it and has done it consistently to try and slow down the result. So Mary says, when is the earliest we could get an answer for who's going to be president? I would keep watching TV the next couple hours. If I'm honest, I have notifications on my phone for people to let me know when it looks like it's about to be called. And if that happens, then I'm going to go and find a cafe. And I might have to cut this a little bit short. I expect it to be within a couple hours at the outside. We're expecting a Biden win, yes. Biden has a number of routes left to victory, and he's leading in all of them. Currently, the president in the remaining states that haven't been called, the president's only leading in one of them, and that's North Carolina, and everyone expected that to be the case. The interesting one is going to be Georgia, which was supposed to be, everyone expected it to be in the president's column. It is on a knife edge as we speak. There is a matter of a few thousand votes in it, last I checked. But that was about 20 minutes ago. And I'm just trying to work out how I cross the road to get a little bit closer to the Washington Monument. What happens if Trump refuses to accept the outcome? Now that is the $6 million question. And it's a question I've been asking for quite a long time, and people have called me an alarmist. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I don't think he's going to accept the outcome. I think there will be a series of court cases that will go all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I think at this point, so in the last couple of days, the president and his team, and by which, when I say his team, I mostly mean Rudy Giuliani and the president's adult sons, have been sort of going around the country to various battleground states and claiming that there are voting irregularities on TV every couple of hours. What they haven't is presented any evidence for that. There are a lot of conspiracy theories going around. One of them was that in one state, Sharpies were being handed out to so people can fill in their ballots, and people were claiming that couldn't be read properly by the machines. Wasn't true. The manufacturer of the counting machines actually recommends that people use Sharpie because it reads better and doesn't smudge and gunk up the machine. So you'll see a lot of things like that. So far, there's nothing to in any way widespread fraud, irregularity, anything like that. So as far as sort of what happens next, I would expect that all of the sort of regional lawsuits will get run out, and he'll have to try and take it to the Supreme Court. That's where it gets a little bit tricky, because Donald Trump, and I'm just crossing the road here, so bear with if I just look around. Donald Trump has managed to do what very few presidents have done, and that's put 3 people onto the Supreme Court. There are 3 pro-Trump people or pro-Republican people on the Supreme Court at this point, which has massively moved its sort of centre of gravity from the left to the right. Now, whether that means that they will be more inclined to agree that there were irregularities in this election remains to be seen. But I think that's certainly what the president is hoping for. So, long story short, this is going to take the arguments are going to take months. But I would expect it to be sorted by Inauguration Day in January, if that helps. When will we know for sure? Well, that's really sort of the same question. So states have different methods of sort of tabulating their votes. What you're seeing now, the states that are being called now are mainly being sort of called as projections by news networks. Now, they're normally right, but it's worth saying that most states don't certify the results for days, if not weeks. Christina Marie, will Trump get escorted out of the White House? This is a really good question. What I've said since day one is we don't know what happens when Donald Trump loses. We've never seen it happen, really. There's always been someone to bail him out or to change the rules in his favour. He's always found a way of getting the dice to roll in his favour. And it's absolutely unclear at this point that he will. Now, he's still got some Republicans on side. Senior Republicans are still sort of towing his line that it's a fraud, that it's the Democrats trying to steal the election. That's not the case. Some Republicans are starting to move a little bit, so he's losing some support from his own party, but not from the people right at the top. Just turn around a little bit. There's the Washington Monument. So really, this has never happened. We've never been in a situation where a sitting president has lost an election and refused to accept the result. And also, it's Donald Trump, and he's an unpredictable man. So, one thing that was interesting, there was a Biden campaign manager who, just before I left the hotel, put out a statement saying the US government has no problem dealing with trespassers in the White House. So take that as you will. Claire says, why do elections take so long? Now, this one takes so long for two reasons. One, because it is actually, in a lot of states, very, very close. Georgia particularly, we've just had word that it's officially going to recount, which means, if I understand correctly, that they're expecting the final result to be within 0.5% of the total. The other reason it's taking so long is because usually in an election in the US, things are fairly smooth. People queue up at polling stations. Their ballot papers are automatically scanned into a system as they put the ballot box. It's not like over in the UK where we sort of put an X in a box and it goes into another box, and then someone has to count it by hand. The initial tallies are done by an automated system. They can read a barcode, and the computer works out how many votes in each column. So it's normally quick. What's different this time is that a huge number of people have voted by mail because of COVID-19. They didn't want to stand in big queues in crowded polling stations on election day. So there's been a massive increase in postal voting. Now, when you vote by post, that puts sort of an extra step in the system because someone physically has to open those votes. Sometimes they're in two envelopes because they're in the postal envelope, and then they're in a privacy envelope. So they're in two envelopes, both of which have to be opened, unfilled, and then manually fed through the system. So that takes longer. So yeah, that's why it's taking so long. Two reasons: postal votes, and it's very close. Lesser says, when will the new president take his place? So inauguration day is in January. So whatever the outcome, President Trump will remain President Trump until then. Joe Biden will be president-elect. And we go into what's known as the lame duck session, which is a bit of a mean thing to say. But what that means is that the president is in office but not really in power, and that's the way it works. Inauguration day is going to be, if assuming Biden wins, inauguration day is going to be extraordinary because there's whole big ceremonies involving one person handing over power to the other, and Donald Trump has repeatedly refused to guarantee a peaceful transfer of power, and it's hard to imagine him standing on the steps of the Capitol and handing over power to Joe Biden willingly. So we'll see what happens there. Erica says, what happens while they're arguing out who will be running the country until a decision is made? I mean, technically, Donald Trump will be in power, and he can still do things. There was a report last night that he's sort of planning to launch his second term before the first term is even finished. So I think he possibly has a list of enemies that he wants to fire. He can still he can still sort of make policy decisions as far as executive orders are concerned. He can still do that. And he can still sign and veto bills. It would be extremely unusual for Congress to try and pass any bills through the Trump White House in a lame duck. It's possible, legally, it's possible, but it would be very, very unusual. He can't declare war, for example. Things of sort of international significance have to be voted on in Congress. And while it looks like the balance of power in Congress isn't shifting that much, and there will still be Republicans there in positions of authority, I can't see that happening. Des says, do you think you'll resign and let Pence in for a few months simply for a potential pardon for Trump? No, I don't think Donald Trump will ever resign. I was watching in the wee small hours of this morning, Mary Trump, who is Donald Trump's niece and not a big fan of her uncle, was on one of the news channels and did quite an extraordinary interview, really, accusing her uncle of trying to arrange a coup by casting doubt in the legitimacy of the election. And she was saying kind of what I was saying earlier, which is, we've never seen him like this. He's never been in a situation where there's no one there to bail him out, and he will not get over being called a loser. I think the host said, how's he going to deal with being fired by the American public? He will not get over being a loser. He will be sort of frustrated and flailing, and he'll try things. Whether he can is another question. But no, I don't see him stepping down. And whether he'll be pardoned for anything is another question. He can be prosecuted once he steps down, once he leaves the presidency. I just want to show you this. This is the World War II memorial, which is a lovely memorial. I'll take you just to the edge of it. It's got a lovely reflecting pool in it. The World War II memorial is one of the more recent ones. And you can't really see it from here, but it's sort of sunk into the ground of the mall because it was added fairly late. But when they were designing it, they decided they had to sink it in the ground. So Abraham Lincoln, who was at one end of the mall, would always have a clear view of the Capitol building, which was apparently how the designers intended it from day one. So yeah, I'm just walking past the World War II memorial. In a moment, we'll get to the reflecting pool of in front of the Lincoln Memorial, which is about a 5-minute walk away, so I'm not sure we'll get there before this ends. If anyone has any more questions, I would be delighted to answer them. I still don't think we've got a result. No one's been sending me frantic text messages. They said the Georgia recount will take a week. How can they call the winner before then? The reason they can call the winner before Georgia is because of the number of electoral votes that Joe Biden already has in the bank. So this is where it gets confusing. And I've written an entire article about this. So if you pop on, onto the Mirror Politics site, it's on there somewhere. But the way presidential elections are decided is based on electoral college votes. So each state is given a certain number of votes, which is in theory based on sort of size and population. And it's those votes that are counted towards who wins the presidency. Now, in theory, those votes are, in most states, all those votes are winner take all. So whoever wins the popular vote in the state gets all of the votes. Now, as it stands, and you're testing my memory now, as it stands, Joe Biden is, if you include Arizona, which is some people say in question, he is on 264. There are 538 in total So he needs 270 to win. Now, what that effectively means is any state that has more than 6, which is all of the ones that are on the table, mean Joe Biden is the next president. So Pennsylvania, which is probably going to be the next call, has 20, because it's a big state, lots of big cities, high population. It's got a lot of votes. So in all likelihood, Georgia's not going to matter. That's going to be icing on the cake. Hannah, hi Hannah. Hello, how are you? Mikey, what's the atmosphere like there at the moment? Calm, if I'm honest. There was some nervousness before election day. A lot of businesses boarded up their windows. The police bought 130 pounds worth of tear gas. And on the night election, there was basically, there was a march, there were protests, but they largely went without incident. No one's windows got blown in. Republicans were claiming there was going to be looting. There was no looting. There was one stabbing at the White House, but the morning after, the police said that they couldn't tie it either through the suspects or the victims to any political motive. So what we have effectively is Washington, D.C. with none of the tourists, which is quite extraordinary. It's really odd. I've been here on a couple of occasions, and you normally can't move, and it's actually quite pleasant. Elsewhere in the country, in Pennsylvania particularly, where the final counts are going on, there is some unrest, but by and large, it is fairly peaceful, fairly calm, and everyone's just sitting and watching CNN to find out who's won. Is there any truth of Trump's allegation voting fraud? I'm going to be careful how I answer this. Not as far as anyone knows. There have been countless studies over the years about election fraud, both in the United States, United Kingdom, and no one has ever found any evidence that anyone has managed to, or even tried to, make any great influence on the result of an election through either mail-in ballot fraud or in-person fraud, so what's called personalization, so turning up and pretending you're someone else or trying to vote twice. It would be extraordinarily difficult to change the result of any race by doing that. And the risk of getting caught is so high that it would be one of the stupidest things you could possibly try and do. There will be cases, people will investigate, sure. And, there are countless videos showing up on the internet of people saying, oh, look, this is election fraud. I saw one this morning where someone was saying, there are people walking into this building with bags where the votes are being counted. And it was people walking into a building with bags. Yesterday, there was a video that someone said was a truck, like a trolley truck full of pallets being dragged into a counting station. And what it actually was a photographer taking his camera equipment inside so he could photograph it. So as far as we know, no, there is no evidence so far. And crucially, the Trump campaign, the people who've actually claimed that there is electoral fraud going on, have provided no evidence of that. We keep asking them, and they provided nothing. Janet says, if the president does not win this election, do you think he'll still remain a key figure in politics? Oh, yes, he will try. Cast your mind back to 2016, when it looked like he was going to lose the first time. Donald Trump, the people around Donald Trump started making noises like they were going to set up their own TV station. Those rumours are going around again. If it's not Donald Trump on the ballot in 2024, which he can do, he can run again, but he will be 79, I think, by the time that comes around. That's pretty old. So it's unclear whether he would want to run again at that age. But he has a number of adult sons and an adult daughter, all of whom are very ambitious. And it sort of runs in the family. So I think there'll be a Trump on the ballot in 2024. Whether they get through the primaries is another question. But I think one of them will run for president in 4 years' time. Now, just before I let you go, I'm going to turn around and you'll see behind me the Lincoln Memorial. We've walked all the way from one end of the National Mall to the other. I hope you've enjoyed the scenery. It's one of my favourite places in the world. Keep watching mirror.co.uk/politics for the latest in the race. Follow us on Twitter, Mirror Politics, Facebook on this page. If you've got any more questions, I'm at Mikey Smith on Twitter. That's normally the best way of getting hold of me. And hopefully we'll have a result shortly.